Hi, my name's John Hill. I'm just looking at us in America. I don't know how strong it's gotten since people have started saying, why are we fighting in politics? Mr. Sanders, Miss Clinton, others before them. And it doesn't matter if they're Republican or Democrat, asking people to fight or asking if they can fight for them to be elected. You know, like if I beat some big guy up down the street for you, will you cast your vote for me? If I have a shootout with five people on Lexington Avenue, will you, cast your vote as a family for me? Because, that's a good thing to do. And so it was funny, you start looking at the question of the wall in Mexico. We had 30,000 deaths in Mexico in 2017. I think then last year, in 2019, there was another 30,000, where the coronavirus went down to 200. And you start saying, wow, what can we do with that? I mean, shouldn't we be doing something? But here we are talking about killing people. I mean, not killing. We don't go that far. We say fight, battle, win, condemn, and then it's like, and then vote for me. And I was just thinking, what is Mexico going to start doing if we start really fighting up here again and again and again? They're going to have a wall on their side about 12 stories higher than our wall. And it's going to have armed camps on it. It's going to have all kinds of people. You won't have a Mexican problem anymore because they'll be looking at you going, you people are crazy. It's not good. It's not good for us. We should really be working at putting everything down on papers that says, what in the heck am I fighting for? Why am I fighting? Is it really the South? Is it really Barack Obama and Donald Trump and Mr. Biden and Mrs. Trump and is it the Ku Klux Klan? Is it the Grand Dragons? Is it White Storm? At the Barbary Coast, that Barbary Coast is what Libya used to be. And it goes all the way into Africa and down into what the Sahara is. Let's see, the Ottoman Empire was kind of around the Middle East, and it went up into Egypt, and it went around in that area, up to Turkey. Rome was Rome, and they all took white slaves. That's what Wikipedia says, white slaves. They had, Scandinavians, they had Irish and English. They had Norwegians. They were taken. Italians. At one point, Italians were being taken. Apparently, I think that's what it said somewhere. But yeah, the last one was the Barbary Coast, and that was from the 1300s all the way up to the 1800s. And so there was slave trade going on for white people or Europeans way back when. And so you could see how the Northern Europeans were probably just fighting back. In fact, you could probably say that it was happening all over the place. In China, with the opiate trades in the 1800s? I mean, opium was so horrible that it was, they were beating people. Chinese were being beaten by it. It was a war, one of the weapons in war. Japan suffered with the Americans by being starved to death. They had an embargo on them in their own port with the metal gunships that a shogun didn't matter. You shoot all the arrows you want, you weren't going to get it. So we've done this to each other for a long time. And when we finally ended slavery, we were the ones who were all over the world it was the same, but we were caught in the place where Africans had been the slave and the white folk, the European Americans had been the slave owners. And it was caught there, it was stayed there. And what happened is you came up with people who hated African Americans and the African Americans who hated the Europeans, but it wasn't it wasn't an honest perspective because it had been happening in Africa. And it had been happening in Asia and in South America. They had Mexicans that had been taking white slaves. But the white people had probably been taking people too in other places at other times. It just had kept going on and on and on. So there's all kinds of really amazingly terrific jokes that can probably come out of this. You don't want to make fun of people. I don't want to make fun of Mr. Biden or Mr. Trump for fighting, for saying the word fight. You want to say, let's go for a language that gives us a chance to get out of it, to get women and men out of sexual slavery. If you look at chakras, you see violence, you see sex, you see force, you see lies or deceit through love. You see the voice is what comes of all four of those working, and you see the vision looking out to see what might happen from it and what you need to do. and then you see a prayer, and then it all starts again. Or if you're atheist, you see that hope that goes out to where you can actually do what you want to do, hopefully. That's what happens from fear. And so our slavery, which is still present, I mean, you look at our media. When you see women being forced into just more or less porn, and they're given to be part of our culture, they're supposed to be cultural, our pop culture or our culture icons, and you see the men, no less, they're being glorified as superheroes and being made to stand up in front of us, very virulent, very muscular, very strong, and they can beat anybody to death with anything, and it's always okay, you know. It's like America's always okay in a war, unless you happen to be their enemy, or the Saudis, or the Chinese, or the Russians, or the Slovenians, or even Iceland and their horrendous army that goes out and makes ice everywhere, you know. It's just not good stuff that happens in a war. And the jokes can be really bad. The jokes can actually make things worse. So we need to find a place that says, I don't want to hurt you. If I hear myself laughing at something, I want to stop myself. If I hear myself making fun of somebody who's actually on the wrong side of fighting, which is either side, I don't want to laugh at that. I want to give them a chance to not be hurt and get out of it and be part of peace, part of that world that used to be. In my research, I'm finding that Eden wasn't that long ago. It was we had Eden at 53,000 years ago. We had a sense of it between 49 and 21,000 years ago, but there was such a fear going on because of meteor strikes and solar flares too, which are harder to pinpoint, and earthquakes, which are less even harder, less possible to tell when they don't happen, because the earth just looks the way it does no matter what year it hit. Those things are what cause our fear. And you respond when you're terrified. It doesn't matter how good you were 5 minutes ago. If an earthquake hits, you're usually running out of the house, right? If it's really bad, or you're enduring it and you get scared and you're a little nervous. When it gets to be torturous, horrendous fear that you are not able to process and take away, you're either going to fight, you're going to try to treat it with your sex, you're going to try to force things through, you're going to lie, even if it's through love, or you're going to speak that way. Like I just said, and then you're going to look for ways to get through, and you're going to pray, or you're going to try for the blessed thoughts, the good thoughts, to keep it going. And that's what fear does. When you know what it is that causes your fear, then you can stop those places, and you can work again. And you can say, we need to shield for our planet. We need to get everybody, the poorest nations and the richest, all need to band together like we used to do. My research shows that we were moving thoughts and math all over the planet, and we were taking care of ourselves. It was the war, it was the fear that kept it from going strong. What we need today to do is to get the information out so everyone can see it, and we can make a world from it, and we can get strong from it. And by doing so, we can actually end our fear and go back to what we used to have. 105,000 years ago, we had a strike in Kazakhstan. It was 105,000 years ago, and the next one was 52,000 years. So we had relative peace for 53,000 years. And I think that's what the Bible and the other holy books refer to as the Garden of Eden. When we went out and we were making the life on earth just beautiful. And I've written Eliza Minnelli saying, I think that's when I think we called it the Emerald City. We called the earth the Emerald City. There was a real Emerald City. I mean, as beautiful as an emerald in every way. And there was many, many more, rubies and diamonds and everything else. But the Earth was actually the Emerald City because of its color from space. And the other planets were just as gorgeous in comparison. And that's what we were very happy with, because we either had a sense in the spirit realm of what the Earth looked like, because we could travel in our minds. That's what we used to use our minds for. Or we actually had craft that moved and took us on travels, or there were beings that came down in their craft and we went with them. That was the time of the peace, and we really lived. We really had a beautiful time then, and we can go back. We can go forward with those thoughts, and we can start recreating Eden. And by doing so, we can end the fear in today's world. And the children, we can get out of crime. We can get out of abuses. We can get out of governance that asks you to fight or asks that it fight for you because, it's just a bad language. Substitute work for fight, and we begin again. And give this information a public viewing at the national level, at the federal government level, and you'll start seeing it live. It's one thing to send it to your neighbors, your friends, to local people, even your parish or your diocese. I'm Catholic. I've sent it to the Pope, and I can't get through. So I'm praying that it gets through here, and that my local representatives and anyone else can get it forward. That's what I'm trying to do, because if I can get it to the presidency, that's where we need the peace. The Pope is that's what he tries in every way to do. With the presidency, they're saying let's fight. And with the opposition candidates, that's the same thing. And there's no way in the world we want to do that. It's been long enough. Mexico doesn't need a wall. Or Mexico doesn't need to pretend that they're, and watch us build the wall even stronger, How do you know Mexico isn't just saying, yeah, keep going? So, no, I don't want to put that on Mexico. This is what we did. This is what Mr. Trump did. And if you look at it in a bad way, you're going to miss what horrors were happening. 30,000 people died in the drug wars in Mexico. And a lot of them were in Tamaulipas, which is, it surrounds, I think it's either just above Mexico City or it's a state. Yeah, I think it's a state just above Mexico City. And it borders Texas. And the drug wars there are just horrible. And we can actually help end those. I think if we send investments to Mexico, people don't want to come here. They don't want to be in America. They want to be Mexican, and they want work, and they want to live, and they don't want to have to beg for food, and they don't want, they don't want horrors living in their country. They want to live in a beautiful way. And if we can be their good neighbors and send not our companies there to take over and start production, but if we can send like an invention and allow Mexicans to, for the short run, purchase the rights to manufacture and produce, a full company that does this, then they have they have everything but the actual patent. And if there's people in Mexico who have patents, let them move forward and begin productions so that good things can happen. Alternative energy, alternative building materials, alternatives to oil. The two people who found nopal to be able to make a leather. I would love to get some of that. That would be so much fun. I'd like a jacket, and I'd like, shoes. I'd like everything out of that. That'd be fun. All of those kinds of companies are the companies of the future. Environmental renewal companies that can go in and fix a river to where it used to be, or go in and see a broad plain where there's nothing, and it's not even fields, but just a barren land, but you could tell that in the ancient world it used to be forests. Why not go in there and replant those forests fully from the very smallest flower all the way to the greatest tree, and let that be Mexico? Why not do that? And that's great for the people. The people can start enjoying life all over. So that's what I think we can do. Mr. Trump was trying at the edge of the moment because nothing was working. Nobody was working, and he was just saying, let's just put a wall up and keep us halfway safe. Because a future with 30,000 deaths is a very bleak future. When we got hit with the corona, it took us down to 200. So we have a chance now to actually go in and stop all the violence. We can stop war with the evidence that says we don't have to listen to the fact that if two people are fighting, they can actually stop and say, somebody can say, stop. Remember why you're fighting. It isn't because you're disagreeing on something. It's because way in the past, there was a strike on the planet that terrorized everybody, made everybody disagree about everything because everybody was trying to get the only food available. So you can actually stop and move past it very quickly. And we can do that with our military, and we can do that with our governance, and we can do that at the UN level. And I remember my wife worked at a place where her friend was one of the co-workers was getting married. And they all had these sunglasses on at the wedding portrait. And there was like 100 people there. It was a big wedding. And it was really cool looking. It was really fun. Everybody had on really dark sunglasses. And I was thinking, what if you put, with that influence, what if you had all of Congress, all of the Supreme Court, and the president, and then all of the, maybe the president could have the past administrations back to Carter, and maybe the speaker could have past speakers. You probably couldn't do it with the Congress because that's too many people. But, the Supreme Court, whomever's available, all of them go up and they have on these sunglasses and they announce, America is going to put in a bid for global peace. And this is what we have. My evidence comes from the Americas. Spider Rock, Heavener's Runestone in Oklahoma. You go to Barringer Crater in Arizona. You go to, there's a line from there going all the way over to Tejon Pass, which passes through Barstow, which is on the eastern edge of the Mojave Desert. And then from there it goes to the ocean outside past Santa Barbara. From Spider Rock, it goes all the way to Easter Island, over to Isla San Felix and up again. And then there's a long line that goes from Easter Island over the Galapagos, over the equator. It goes over Cuba, and then right over Scotland, I think in the Orkney Islands. It comes around and touches on an Ashoka pillar in India. And before it comes under the ocean, around underneath Australia, and comes back into the same place at Easter Island. Just wonderful, wonderful work, and it's all done by ancient people. And it actually predates the Younger Dryas event and goes back into the time of Eden, when we were like, well, how do we get there? Who's going to have the big cake? And who's stopping where? I want to learn how to do that one dance, and I want to do that one thing with ceramics that everyone talks about. That's how we found all of these places. It was map making back then, and it was also scientific, and it led to being able to take care of the planet and do our solstice markers were based on a lot of it, and do a lot of work. We did a lot of work from it. So it's a wonderful gift. And that's what's in the Americas. And I'm from California. I discovered all this, and it's pretty new. I don't think anybody else is showing it. There are signs of it showing up later with Stonehenge itself in Wales by Robin Heath. And I have a lot of connections, Scott Onstadt, Mr. Hancock, Randall Carson didn't have as much. Those three people mainly, though. Mr. Giorgio Soukelos had a little bit in there, which was the large diagonal, and a lot of just good fun was in it. So there's a lot of good information to work from. I'm just praying that we take advantage of it very quickly while the corona is still keeping us limited, and while the wars are down. Before we go back to Afghanistan, before we go back to Syria more heavily than has been shown in the recent news, and before anything worse happens. I've got friends and family in the military, and I don't want it to go any further. So I'm praying to God that we take advantage of what we have and make it strong, make it stick.